I'm Karen Nelson, and you're listening to Becoming You Again podcast, episode number 64. Welcome back to Becoming You Again. I'm your host, Karen Nelson. I'm a certified divorce confidence coach, and this is the podcast where I teach you how to reconnect with yourself, create emotional resiliency, and live a truly independent life so you can have an even better life than when you were married. Welcome back, my lovelies. I am so glad that you're here. So I've been having kind of some fun things going on with the podcast. It is growing so much, and I love every second of it. Thank you to every single person who has listened to the episodes, who has gotten back to me and told me how much these episodes mean to you, how they are affecting your life, how they are helping. I have gotten messages. People have been sharing. It has been growing like wildfire, and I am so excited, first of all, that it is reaching so many people. So thank you very much for all of the shares, all of the comments, all of the likes. What I would love most is if you would please just take a quick minute on whatever podcasting app that you listen to the podcast on and give it a quick rating. We've had a few, and I am so thankful to the people who have been willing to take 10 seconds out of their listening time and give it a rating. But I want this podcast to continue to grow, to continue to help women who are going through divorce, just like you, who are struggling and who haven't heard of the podcast yet. Because the more ratings the podcast can get, the more the algorithm picks up on whatever podcasting app the algorithm is reading it on and says, oh, people are responding to this podcast. We better share it in more places. We better make some suggestions to more people that this might be a podcast that they want to listen to. So do me a favor right now, while you're on your phone, just open it up as you're listening right now and just find where you rate. If it's an Apple podcast, you just scroll to the very bottom, hit the 5-star rating or whatever stars you want to give it. And if it's on Spotify, I think it's just right there, right when you open up the podcast. It's just right there on that main page. I don't even think you have to scroll to anything, and you can just give it whatever rating you want. 5 would be amazing, but it's up to you. You guys are awesome. Thank you for taking that 10 seconds to just give it a quick rating and help get the word out about this podcast, because I truly am so excited to be able to help so many women and men who are going through their divorce, who are struggling with the mental and the emotional toll that we all know happens as we go through a divorce. So thank you again. I appreciate it. I love you. You're amazing. Now, let's jump into this podcast episode, because today I am talking about divorce insomnia. Now listen, we've all been there. It's 2 a.m. and you're wide awake, right? 20 minutes ago, you were asleep. And then you woke up out of a dead, deep sleep with the most anxiety-ridden panic attack. Your heart is racing. There's questions about the future, and they seem so pressing and they seem very important in this moment, right? What's going to happen if he doesn't pay child support? What am I supposed to do if I have to move out of the house? How will I be able to find health insurance for myself when I don't even have a job? Why did he even leave? Why couldn't I make him happy? How is this going to affect me and the kids? This is ruining my life. What if I never find anyone to be with again? What if the kids decide that they don't want to come back after they've spent a weekend at dad's house? Right? Does any of this sound familiar? These are the types of questions that come into our head in the middle of the night, right? And our brain thinks that they're very important and they're very pressing, and we must find the answer to them right now. Or at least think about them lots and lots and lots, right? I know every single one of you, or probably the majority of you, can relate to what I'm saying here. And the middle of the night is the time when our mind is at its most vulnerable and unmanaged, because our nervous system is on high alert. Because here's what happens when our nervous system kicks into gear. Our nervous system can't tell the difference between what's a real story and what's pretend unless we make that differentiation for it. And so to our nervous system and our primitive brain, real physical danger and emotional danger are of equal threat. And so the response is the same. it is that panic mode that we go into. And often what is happening inside of us during the day is we have distractions and we have kids and jobs and errands and things to focus our attention on. And so it's much easier to kind of avoid these worries and these insecurities and keep our nervous system more under control, like more in check. But then when we lay down to sleep or fall asleep, or when we wake up in this panic, it's because our brain realizes, oh, now I've got her full attention. Let's worry about all these things that we should have been worrying about earlier today. And so we have worries about the past, and then we make up all of these stories about this unknown future, and these show up loud and strong and hard in our brain and in our nervous system. And our brain is really sneaky in this way because it thinks that worry is actually useful. It's like it's saying, well, since we don't know what the future is going to look like, especially now that we are going through a divorce, I'm just going to worry about it, and I'm going to spin in these circular thinking thoughts to try and prevent anything bad from happening in the future. And it's flawed, really, in thinking this, because what it thinks is if I can just worry enough about something now, maybe I can prevent something bad from happening in the future. And when we think about this logically, of course, that makes no sense, right? Worrying about something now is not going to prevent something from happening in the future. All it's doing is making us feel anxious, feel panicked right now. And if something were to happen in the future, we'd also feel panicked and anxious in that moment as well. Worry is a liar, and it especially likes to lie to us in the middle of the night. But the problem is when we're tired and when we're desperate to fall back asleep, logical thinking is the last thing that's on our mind. And so I'm going to teach you some tips on what you can do. And you don't have to go all the way to logical thinking, but these tips are going to help you be able to calm your nervous system and get your brain in check so that you can hopefully either fall asleep faster at night or fall back asleep if you find yourself in this divorce insomnia mode. So I'm going to give you 4 tips, and I really think that these are going to help you. I'm excited to share them with you. And I want to remind you, the key here is to try a couple of these because we don't really know which ones are going to stick. Some things work for some people, other things work for other people. Maybe you need a combination of a couple or maybe just one, but try them out and see how they work. Just be open to hearing what they are and trying them, and don't decide right now, oh, that's not going to work for me. Because if you decide before even trying it, of course it's not going to work for you, right? So just be open to these possibilities. These might be things that you haven't heard before or tried before. And I promise you, it's not going to be a lot of like, drink some tea before bed or make sure your room is dark. I think those things can definitely help, but those are not the tips that I'm going to be giving you today. All right. So the first thing that is really going to help is to empty out your worrisome thoughts before you go to bed. So what I mean by this is like keep a journal or a notebook by your bed, and every night before you go to sleep, take 5 minutes or a couple of minutes, however long, and just write out all of your thoughts that you've kind of been a little worried about or you've kind of been anxious about, or just anything that's on your mind before you go to bed, and just write it all out on paper. And then I want you to tell yourself that you can take as much time as you need tomorrow during the day to figure out any kind of solutions for these problems. But right now, it's sleep time, and we're not going to worry about it or think about it right now. It's kind of like you're giving your brain reassurance that, yep, these things are important and these things need to be figured out, but the middle of the night is not the time to do it, right? So you're kind of like letting your brain go, yeah, I hear you. I know we have these worries. It's fine, but we're not going to think about them right now. Right now, we're going to sleep, and tomorrow we can think about them and figure out solutions. And this may be exactly what your brain needs to just let go of figuring out all of the things it believes are pressing, even if it's just pushing it off until the next morning. The second thing that you can do if you wake up in the middle of the night with all of these circular spinning thoughts about the what ifs and the oh no's and what will happen thoughts is to widen the scope of the lens. And what I mean by that is instead of focusing on trying to tell yourself to stop thinking about all of these individual thoughts, I want you to instead recognize that what's really going on is you are having intrusive thoughts. And this is something that I teach when it comes to just your everyday worry and anxiety thoughts. But this can also be really useful in the middle of the night when you wake up in a panic, right? Because the tendency when we notice our mind spinning in thoughts is to tell ourselves, stop thinking about this thing. Stop thinking about this. I need to go back to sleep. And we kind of get mad at ourselves that we're thinking these things. But what happens when we tell ourselves not to think about something? We think about it more, right? We can't just say, don't think about that big yellow bus. What did you immediately do? You thought about a big yellow bus, right? And so when we can widen our lens and focus on thinking as something that we are generally doing, rather than getting really, really specific about exactly what it is that we're thinking about, your brain is going to kind of find it boring because you're just going to be like, yep, I'm thinking some intrusive thoughts. Instead of really focusing on the actual individual thoughts, we're just going to keep that lens really wide. Your brain's going to get bored and it's not going to think that these things are as important as it did 5 minutes ago. And it's going to have a much easier time letting go of the need to protect you emotionally as your nervous system was triggered, right? And you'll be able to fall back asleep much easier. So when you notice this happening, just remind yourself, I'm having intrusive thoughts. There goes those intrusive thoughts again. These are intrusive thoughts. And your body will have a chance to feel more calm and peaceful as your nervous system re-regulates, and then you can fall back asleep. Now, the third thing that is going to help minimize the divorce insomnia is to get out of the past and get out of the future, which is where worry and anxiety love to live, right? And instead, I really want you to focus on the present. Now, this is a technique that I teach if we're triggered and we're having a freeze trauma response. What often happens when we go into a freeze mode is we will ruminate in our head and we will ruminate in these spinning thoughts. And again, it's our brain's way of trying to figure out solutions to try to fix or change the past or try to solve for a problem in the future that hasn't happened yet, but it thinks that it's important. And so what I teach is to instead, I want you to step into compassion for yourself and your body in these moments by bringing everything back to the present. And you can do this even in the middle of the night. And I promise you, you can do it while you're laying in your bed. And you do this by focusing on your 5 senses. Okay, so I just want you to take each one at a time and just notice them. What do you hear? Focus on it and direct your thoughts to only that sense, one at a time. After you've figured out what you hear, then move on to sight. Open your eyes and what can you make out in the dark? Figure these things out. Focus on it. Next, move on to taste. Are there any lingering tastes in your mouth from dinner or from when you brushed your teeth or maybe you had a drink of water? Next, move on to smell. Is there a scent that you happen to notice in your room? And if not, you can always bring your hands up to your nose and maybe you can smell a scent of the lotion that you put on before bed or maybe the hand soap that you used. And last, you would move on to touch. What can you feel around you as you lay on your bed? What is the texture of your sheets and your pajamas? Can you notice the pressure of your body against your bed, against your mattress without moving to actually feel it and know that it's there? By redirecting your focus away from the past and away from the future and instead really focusing on what is present right in front of you right now, your mind will stop racing and that emotional response that you're having when your nervous system kicks in will become grounded and calm, and it will allow you to fall asleep or return to sleep. Because these are things that you can do even when you're getting into bed and you haven't fallen asleep yet, right? And then the last thing that you can do is decide that maybe it's just not a problem if you don't get enough sleep. And I'm putting quotes around enough sleep because, first of all, what does that even mean, right? Maybe it's just not even a problem. And this is my favorite one because this is the one that I have used to help with my own sleep story. But again, I think it might be a combination of a couple of these. Try them out and see what works best for you. Now, I teach this all the time, but what we think often manifests itself in our lives. And if we are continually thinking and complaining and talking about how we're not getting a good night's sleep or we're not getting enough sleep, or we just don't think that we are good sleepers, then we are going to continue to prove that to be true. And for me personally, for a really long time, I've had this story that I'm just not a good sleeper. I wake up a lot. I sleep very light. I have to go to the bathroom at least once. And so I would wake up and I would feel groggy and tired and sluggish throughout my day because I was constantly telling myself, I just didn't sleep good. I'm not a good sleeper. I never get a good night's sleep. I had this story. And here's what's really fascinating about this. Who gets to decide if you've gotten enough sleep or if it was a good sleep or if you are a good sleeper? You get to decide. There is no set definition that says what good sleep even means. Good is a very subjective term. And if you want to decide for yourself that you're going to get enough sleep, that you are a good sleeper, that you sleep well, or that you get exactly the right amount of sleep that you need, you can totally tell yourself that story. Now, of course, there are societal norms that we can use as guidelines to decide for ourselves if we're getting enough sleep, but those are just guidelines. You can decide for yourself anything that you want. And here's what's really interesting. If you continue to tell yourself that you're not a good sleeper or you're not getting enough sleep, and if you wake up in the middle of the night and you worry about it and you kind of are looking at the clock like, oh, if I go back to sleep now, I might get 5 hours of sleep if I'm lucky. Or maybe I'll be able to fall asleep faster. Why can't I fall asleep? And you're constantly spinning in this story that it's taking you forever to fall back asleep, then your brain will latch onto that story and make it mean that something has gone wrong. And this not being able to sleep is a big problem. And your brain will see it as a big problem. When we believe that something is a problem, our nervous system gets activated and it goes into panic mode. And what have I just explained with all of the other 3 situations? When you go into panic mode and your brain believes that there's a problem, like not being able to fall asleep or looking at the clock and thinking, oh no, I'm only going to get 5 hours and now I'm going to be super tired tomorrow, then it's going to be almost impossible for your nervous system to calm down and deregulate so that you can fall asleep. So it's like this cycle. You believe that you're not a good sleeper, that you haven't been sleeping well, that it's a problem. Your brain latches on to this idea that it's a problem, which then excites your nervous system into panic mode, which then reinforces to your brain that, yep, this is a problem just like I thought. And you prove to yourself over and over again that you are not getting enough sleep, that you can't sleep, and that you're not a good sleeper. Isn't it fascinating how we do this to ourselves? I find it fascinating. But if we decide that it's really not a problem if we wake up in the middle of the night, and it's really not a problem if we get 5 hours of sleep, or that we'll always get the right amount that we need to do the things that we need to do the next day, then our brain doesn't see this lack of sleep as a problem, and it will keep you more calm at night when you wake up, which will help you be able to fall back asleep more easily, more quickly. And this is truly what I have had to do with my sleep story, and it's something that I'm still working on. I'm still trying to get better at this. But I started to kind of shift this idea because I realized that my story was keeping me awake in the middle of the night. I was activating my nervous system because I thought that it was a problem that I wasn't a good sleeper. And then I couldn't fall back to sleep. And now I'm learning to go off of a new story that I am totally capable of functioning at the level that I need to with the amount of sleep that I'm able to get at night. Do you see how I shifted that story? And now my brain doesn't think it's a problem if I wake up in the middle of the night. And it's so much easier for me to fall back asleep if this happens. So this is how you can get to a new story about your sleep if you want. And often this is just going to start with asking lots of questions. And the question why is like this magical question that you can ask yourself at any time to really help you dig deeper and deeper and deeper. So this is what questioning why or questioning your story can kind of look like to help you figure out what a better story will be. You always want to start with the main story that you've got going on. So I'm going to give you 2 examples here. So for example, if I don't fall back asleep now, I won't be able to get everything done that I need to tomorrow. Well, why is it a problem if you don't get everything done on your list? Because then I'll have things piling up for the next day, and it will become never ending. Why do you need to accomplish all of these tasks? So I can feel accomplished and fulfilled. Why do you need to feel accomplished and fulfilled? So that I can believe that I'm worthy and valuable. And the next example is, I've only gotten 4 hours of sleep and now I'm going to be tired all day tomorrow. Why is it a problem if you're tired? Because then I'll be short-tempered with my kids. Why is it a problem if you're short-tempered with your kids? Because then I'm not going to be a good mom to my kids. Why is it a problem if you're not a good mom? Because if I'm a good mom, then I can love myself. And if I'm a bad mom, then I can't. So it's interesting, right? I've given you these 2 scenarios where we're digging into the main story and figuring out what the underlying belief is if you don't get a good night's sleep. And when we really dig in and question and ask why this is a problem, so much of this ends up being about giving ourselves permission to see our worth and our value and to love ourselves. And if the ultimate goal is to believe that you have inherent worth and value, then getting one step closer means letting go of the story that it's a problem if you don't have enough sleep, or if you don't get a certain amount, or if you wake up in the middle of the night. Work on your story. What does it mean? Why is it a problem for you if you don't get the amount of sleep that you think that you have to get? Or why is it a problem for you if you wake up? What are you making that mean about you? And really dig in and figure out that underlying meaning. And then decide for yourself, what's a better story that I can tell myself instead, which is what I have been doing as well. You can decide that this is truly just not a problem any longer. And lastly, as a bonus, I want to mention that if you've done all of the things and you're still kind of struggling with being able to sleep at night or waking up and not being able to go back to sleep, go see your doctor. There is no shame that needs to be associated with asking for help through maybe a medication, a prescription, maybe CBD, or some other way that your doctor might advise for you. Just go see your doctor. It's totally fine for you to get the help that you need as you are going through something like a divorce. There are going to be struggles, and if you can employ whatever means necessary to help you move through this in the most effective way, then I say go for it. I am all in on all of the ways, right? All right, my lovelies, thank you so much for being here. That is what I have for you today. I love you all, and I will talk to you next week. If you like what you heard on today's podcast and you want to know more about working one-on-one with me, you can go to www.karennelsoncoaching.com and schedule your free consult to find out more. That's www.karennelsoncoaching.com. Thanks for listening. If this podcast episode agreed with you in any way, please take a minute to follow, rate, and leave a comment. And for more details, make sure to check out the show notes by clicking the link in the description.